In question 5, we're told that there's a jar that contains coloured beads, and that when Ajit takes a random bead from the jar, there's various probabilities. Part 1 is quite straightforward. It's find the probability that the bead is yellow or blue, and that's the key word, or. The or rule in probability tells us to add the probabilities. So the probability that it's yellow or blue equals the probability of it being yellow, 0.08, plus the probability of it being, probability of it being yellow, 0.08, plus the probability of it being blue, 0.25, and that gives us a probability of 0.33, so a third. Now, for part 2, we're asked to find the probability that the bead is neither yellow nor pink. So it's not yellow, it's not pink. Now, you have to be careful here, because you can in your head come to the assumption that, well, if it's not yellow or pink, it's got to be blue. Now, if that was the case, all of these probabilities would add up to 1. 1 is the total probability, so that would tell us that there's only yellow, pink or blue. It adds up to 1, so there's the only ones in there. We can't make that assumption here. There is other eventualities that can happen. So instead what we have to do is the probability, the probability that it is not yellow, it's not very well written, sorry, not yellow nor pink, so it's 1 minus those probabilities, tells you the probability of something not happening. So it's 1 minus the probability of it being yellow, 0.08, minus the probability of it being pink, 0.1. That gives us a probability of 0.82. So that's the probability that it's neither yellow nor pink. Now, in the next part, we're told that Ajit replaces the first bead in the jar. He then takes a random second bead from the jar. So once he's taken one out, he puts it back in. So it doesn't in any way change the probability the second time round. That's important to remember. So we're asked to work out the probability that the first bead is yellow, and again that's an important word there, we're going to apply the and rule, and the second bead is blue. So just remembering the probabilities, yellow is 0.08, blue is 0.25, so that means that the probability equals 0.08, and whereas in the earlier question we added it, because we're saying and, the and rule tells us we multiply by the probability of it being blue. And remember, the reason the probabilities do not change, whether it's the first or second go, is because he replaces the first bead in the jar. So he takes it out, sees the colour, puts it back. That's the reason why these probabilities don't change. So 0.08 times by 0.25 gives us 0.02. Now, in part C, we're told that there's a second jar which contains 100 coloured beads. 20 of these beads are brown. We're told that Ajit takes a random bead from the jar. He records the colour of the bead and then returns it to the bead to the jar. He does this 60 times, and it wants us to work out an estimate for the number of times there's a brown bead. So the probability, the probability of a brown bead is equal to 20 out of the 100, and that gives us 0.2. Now we're told that he does this 60 times. Now again, because he replaces the bead, so it says he returns the bead to the jar. Because he does that, the second time round that I do this, imagine I do this the first time the probability is 20 out of 100. When I do it the second time, there's still 100 beads and there's still 20 brown ones within there, so again that will be another 0.02. Every time of the 60 that I do that, I'll get a probability of 0.2. So that means that, and to work out an estimate for how many times out of 60 you'd expect a brown bead, 0.2 times 60, which is, let me stick to the blue, is 12.